Tekken 7 is right around the corner, and the fighting game community is buzzing about the long-awaited early 2017 release of the title to home consoles. In a genre swimming in 2D fighters being released seemingly every quarter, a 3D fighting game of this caliber is a much-needed breath of fresh air if you ask me. Tekken has always had a fairly large roster, and this game is no different with 36 characters currently announced, plus Eliza as a pre-order character and 2 guest characters scheduled to be announced in the winter of this year and another in spring of next year. There are, however, a few omissions from the roster which I'd like to address in this video. Whilst making this list, I tried to avoid characters that have essentially been made obsolete by clones, move lists being heavily integrated into other characters, or characters presumed super dead by Tekken lore. So without further ado, here is my top 5 characters currently missing from Tekken 7. Number 5.
Armor King.
I know I said I wouldn't add characters made kind of obsolete, but hear me out. Every pro wrestler has an evil counterpart, from Bret, HBK, Rock and Austin, Roman Reigns and The Undertaker. Armor King has been a prominent character of Tekken since the very first one. Although he has missed a few since then, it wasn't until Tekken 6 that his fighting style was defined as more of a counter-poker grappler than King's straight-up wrestling style. What made Armor King scarier than King in T6 and Tekken Tag 2 was Armor King had much better lows and mids than King, and powerful counter hits that made people scared to press buttons against him. I will admit that it's kind of unlikely that we'll ever see him again in Tekken 7, but as a personal wishlist I had to include Armor King. Appearance-wise, I've always thought Armor King looked much cooler than regular King, and looking at what they did for King's attire in this game, I'd be really interested to see what they could do for a new Armor King design. In Tekken 7, however, King has absorbed a lot of Armor King's moves, and likelihood of seeing this character, as I said before, is admittedly quite slim. But I think his style and design are quite different enough to warrant the number 5 spot on my list.
Perfect. You win.
Number 4.
Athena.
When Athena was first playable in Tekken 6, I immediately thought her fighting style was so unique and interesting that I had to try her out. Nobody in Tekken plays like her, with her multiple stances and transitions to stances from her attacks. She's a very tricky character, and many likened her to Voldo from the Soul Calibur series. Being such a huge fan of animations in video games, she has one of the most unique and impressive animations of anyone on the roster. I like her design and movements, and whilst I never could personally adapt to her playstyle, she is a character that I always found interesting to watch, and a character that I felt made Tekken more interesting and diverse. As much as I'd like to see her in Tekken 7, Athena not being in the game well kinda makes sense, because her story is essentially finished with Azazel being destroyed, and she's not related or linked to anyone else after that. She's only been on the roster since Tekken 6, so her not being in the game would make her the only new character to not return in the following game since Jun Kazama from Tekken 2 to Tekken 3. Number 3.
My turn.
Anna Williams.
Oops. I'm sorry.
Anna's abrasive personality and stylish attire have been in all but one major console release of Tekken. Anna is of course Nina's younger sister, and her story being so closely linked to following around her sister to screw up whatever Nina is planning, leads many players, including myself, to think, hey, where is Anna? Tekken lore suggests that she was forgotten and neglected by her father as a child, and after Nina's memory loss, Nina's memories of her younger sister are gone too. Sad much? And with absolutely no mention of Anna, bearing a possible mention in Nina's console story, it seems Harada has forgotten her too. Poor Anna. In Tekken 5, it seems Namco had really put in an effort to reduce clone characters. For example, no longer was Lee a straight lore clone. Anna had gained a lot of originality in this game too. Love her or hate her, I think with Nina's inclusion in the game, it would be extremely odd to not mention Anna in some way. Perhaps Nina finally bested her sister, or Anna is off playing Overwatch like the rest of the world.
What an utter disappointment.
Number 2.
Julia Chang.
Julia Chang or her mother Michelle have been in every single Tekken game in some form or another, and she has been one of my most played characters since Tekken 3. As mentioned before, I'm a huge fan of animations in video games, and I'm also a fan of pro wrestling, and after I saw her mother hit a fisherman suplex in her very first game, I knew I had to play her. A Tekken game with no Changs really lose a big part of Tekken gameplay that have been a mainstay in the series for as long as I can remember. One of the main reasons is there really isn't another character with a bow and arrow type move currently in the game. Until now, only Michelle, Julia and to some extent Wang have had a move like this which give them scary mix-ups from crouching positions. These mix-ups led to full combos and were even scarier against the wall. On top of this, Changs are counter-hit monsters, have strong throw options, a safe elbow into their Mad Axe's throws, and so much more. Julia Chang's story doesn't really set anyone's world on fire. I mean, she's into nature and stuff. But for her, it's 100% gameplay reasons I'd like for her to be in the game, and more than anyone else on this list, her playstyle and moveset I'm completely missing from Tekken. I say Julia, but I would absolutely settle for Michelle or Wang, but they are old or super dead. I need Julia Chang.
Your sacrifice walks in vain.
Number 1.
Lei Wulong.
Even casual players or people new to the series have seen or heard of Lei Wulong, or at the very least, Jackie freaking Chan. When they hear that arguably one of the most recognizable characters in the history of Tekken isn't in Tekken 7, they say, wait, what? In my honest opinion, it would be like if Law wasn't in the game. I mean, I always put those two together because they are essentially Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan in a fighting game. They even resemble them on top of their fighting styles. It does feel a little odd to be weeks away from release and Lei is nowhere to be found. Little needs to be said about Lei's fighting style. He relies on stances and attacks in unfamiliar and weird positions to confuse his opponents into making mistakes and to think twice about attacking from where they are. Lei is far from an easy character to use because it requires the player to have a very solid knowledge of Tekken, what the other players can do, and also be able to successfully read the opponent during the match. He is however extremely rewarding when you make the correct reads. Lei players get a lot of respect because of how hard the character is to play. Story-wise, Lei is a cop, and he's always after someone.
Freeze!
He was last after Feng Wei in Tekken 6, and this being the next release in canon, shouldn't he still be following him since Feng is still in the game? Either way, in my honest opinion, I'd really like to see all 5 of these characters in Tekken 7 in some form or fashion, but Julia and Lei, honestly, I think it's really odd that they are nowhere to be found in some form. So that is my top 5 characters that are currently not in Tekken 7 that I'd really like to see back in some form or fashion. I do think it's worth mentioning that Harada, the producer of Tekken himself, has mentioned in the past that he doesn't like paid DLC and he doesn't really want to add it to his game. He did say this over 5 years ago, so it's quite possible that his stance has changed, but there is always the possibility that we might see a situation similar to Tekken Tag 2 where a bunch of characters were added as free DLC after the game's release on console. Much more recently than that, however, during an interview with PlayStation Lifestyle, when answering if there were any console exclusive features coming to console, he jokingly answered if there had ever been an installment which hasn't added anything extra for console. He could simply be referring to the extensive story mode content, which is console exclusive, but could he possibly be talking about anything extra? Hopefully that means characters in the future have a chance. For me personally, I would absolutely pay for Lei or Julia if I had to, because without them in the game, I would honestly feel like something's missing. Saying all this, I'm absolutely hyped for the release of Tekken, and early 2017 cannot come soon enough. If you agreed or disagreed with this list, I would love to hear your opinions, who you would all like to see in Tekken 7, and if you are excited as I am for the impending release of this game. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like or following the channel for videos on fighting game news, tutorials and everything related to fighting games. I have a lot planned for the future of this channel, and I'm very excited about the future of fighting games in 2017. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.